This is the Farmington Room of the library. Today is March 23rd, 2021. I'm Betty Coykendall. I'm going to give a little history of this room and the contents of it, the two rooms. In these two rooms, you have one of the finest local history collections in the state. Its strengths are the collection of the old books in the cases over there and a lot of things in the back room, especially the old library records. This collection exists thanks to several people, and you need to know a bit about them as background to understand how this all came about. The background, early information, is taken from a history that was done by Claire Ashworth in the 1960s. You have a copy of this somewhere in this room, but I don't know where it is. First librarians for the collections for the libraries in town, starting in 1795, were a group of porters. The first one was Elijah Porter, a tailor. He kept the collection at his house on Main Street. He put protective sheepskin covers on a lot of the old books, and he kept the records for the first library of the First Society. He continued when they changed their name to the Monthly Library. He also continued for the third iteration, the Rising of the Phoenix Library, beginning in 1814. And in 1817, a new competitor, the Village Library, elected Scylla Porter as their librarian. When the two merged in 1826 as the Phoenix, Scylla took over the job and the combined collection and the records. When the Phoenix sunk in 1839, the Farmington Library Company was formed, and Scylla Porter passed along everything to W.S. Porter. The Porters carried the libraries and were succeeded by several different men until eventually things got to Julius Gay. Now, who was Julius Gay? He was a local guy who was born here in 1834, is educated as a surveyor, worked as a surveyor. He was a Renaissance man. He built his own organ. I always was impressed with that. Lived on Main Street next to the bank, became both the treasurer and then the president of the bank. He was the town clerk for a while. He was the father of 4 girls, but he never had any grandchildren. He was a librarian, and he was, in my mind, the first great amateur historian of this town. He made annual speeches that were published individually and eventually were put together in a book called Farmington Papers. In the twilight of his life, he was one of the original trustees of the FVGLA, and at first treasurer, working hand in hand with the Barneys. The Barney family, succeeding Julius Gay. The young and I think wealthy widow, Sarah Brandegie Barney, came to town in the 1870s with her unmarried sister, Julia Brandegie, and her young son, Danford Newton Barney. They lived in a house at the outside of Parsons Corner on Farmington Avenue, the intersection of High Street. This was the house that was torn down about 4 years ago to build the bank. It's the one that the Historical Society wants to rebuild. In 1882, Sarah and Julia started the Tunxus Library in competition with the then Farmington Library. They wanted a completely free service, especially for children, and they succeeded brilliantly. Julia was the librarian in a building across the avenue from their house, and they financed the library themselves with help from others, particularly Julius Gay and Sarah Porter. They were so good at this that the Farmington Library was forced to merge with them, so everything got passed along again to the Barneys. Meanwhile, Sarah Barney's son, D. Newton, as he was known as, had grown up, became educated as a lawyer, started a practice in Hartford, and in 1890 he married Laura Dunham, the daughter of one of the founders of the Hartford Electric Light Company, later Helco. They bought and moved into what was later known as the Barney House, 11 Mountain Spring Road. Eventually, D. Newton, in addition to his law practice, became very high in the corporate group at Helco. When Sarah Porter died in 1900, and her will established the nonprofit Village Green Association, it was D. Newton Barney who turned that into the Farmington Village Green and Library Association. He immediately took charge of it, became the president, was president for life, and he wanted to build a new library. And especially after his mother Sarah died in 1908, he wanted to build it and name it for her, in memory of her. After some fits and starts, he accomplished it single-handedly in 1917 and 18 with the construction, opening, and endowment of the Barney Library. He served as president of the FEGLA until his death and was succeeded by his son, Austin Dunham Barney, who served until he died as well. In his career, Dunham became the CEO of Helco, and he was a mover and a shaker in the Hartford business community. Dunham's daughter, Harriet, known as Hattie, the only one I ever knew, was married, the only Barney I ever knew, was married first to John King, and then after a divorce married Bill Lidgerwood. And she was active in the FEGLA and its two major units, the library and the Stanley Whitman House, all her life. She was the nicest and most unassuming rich person I've ever known in my life. Those three generations of Barneys revered local history and made sure that many, many items, both here and at the Stanley Whitman House, were preserved for posterity. So we owe them and Julius Gay and the Porters a lot. They left us the core of this collection. Now, what was the so-called Farmington Room like physically? When I moved here in 1972, it was in the village library, not even called the Barney Library then, called the village library. It was in a converted closet. There was enough space for some of the books and one person, who was usually Catherine Jeston, the curator. Most of the items were stored elsewhere, including the case collection. I have no idea where it was at that time. I never saw it then. But there was somewhere in that building, I don't know where. When this building was planned, this room was basically demanded by Hattie and Bill Lidgerwood so that things could be put together and under the proper conditions for preservation and be available to the public. When they gave 10% of the funds for the entire building, this was done just as they wanted. So thanks to them, we have this. There was enough space to finally put everything together. And there was also enough space to transfer from the town clerk's vault, which was bursting at the seams then, items that were no longer needed for the day-to-day functioning of that office. They had a real space problem over there, and so we brought a lot of stuff over here from there. The library acquired the selectmen's records, the ledgers, and a lot of items in the back room that I'm going to point out to you later. For about 20 years, there was a part-time curator of these two rooms, Ann R. Carey, who did a lot of work to organize and care for the collection. And she had a couple of volunteer helpers who did much of the tedious grunt work, including spending 2 years doing nothing but flattening and preserving the selectmen's records, which were all in these little tied up little bundles of stuff, all folded over. About 2008 or 9, the part-time curator position was dropped as unnecessary, and the collection suffered without care for several years. Then we had staff member Travis Fader part-time for about 18 months, and he accomplished quite a bit. When Laura Horn took over as director, a project was done to organize and document the back room. And progress was made, but still no one was assigned to care for this collection on a formal basis. So we come to today and what's here now. I'm going to try to show you as much as I can in about an hour to point out things for you for two reasons. Either they're important for being useful and good sources of local historical information, or they're valuable parts of the old collection. I know you're thinking about the digitization project, and I'm going to suggest many candidates for that, but with two cautions. Number one, try not to repeat work that has already been done. Why invent the wheel again? You've got a lot of items that are already digitized. Number two, be very careful about handling of your old books and documents. Many of them are fragile, and you don't want to harm them. In that respect, I have two notes. First, I've made a zip drive of several files of information that I have on my computer at home, plus copies I have of things that are already digitized, and I'm going to give it to you, Chris, later this morning. And it's for all of you to use, for your committee to use, Andy. Secondly, the book cradle. I've been looking for the book cradle and I haven't been able to find it. It's somewhere. You own one. Do you know what that book cradles look like?
Yes.
You own one. It's somewhere, I don't know where it is. It's essential when you start handling these books. Okay, I'm going to start out in the big room and point out things. I'm going to start to move now, okay? In the alcove, you still have the old card catalog. Please don't get rid of it. It's a wonderful source of information. When I can't find something, I come over here and I look through this thing. Number 2, you have in these drawers, these flat file old drawers here, a terrific collection of old maps of the town. Some of them are copies of the land division maps that are over in Town Hall. And those land division maps were all copied by Julius Gay in the 1800s because the old original 16 and 1700s ones were disintegrating. And he copied everything to make sure that the knowledge would get passed along. And you've got copies of those, but you have a really good collection of maps down there. It's down here somewhere, in one of these drawers. I never know where things are in here, does it? Okay. In 1948, 49, 50, Abel Hurlbert did a project. She was the town clerk then. Did a project on the houses of the village of Farmington. This is the result of it. They're alphabetically by geography, the alphabetical by street and street number. And the pictures were all taken by Mrs. Lewis. Annie Burr Lewis took these pictures. And they're basically title searches. There's only one caveat with Mabel, and that is that she wanted everything to be as old as it could possibly be. So very often you'll find that she's got really old dates on some houses that she can't justify, because you can go back and see a deed that says that it was transferred with only land. And so she insists the house was there. So that's what you have to sort of have a little doubt in your mind every once in a while.
Have any of those been digitized, Betty?
Yes, yes. Any one of these houses that's on the architectural survey has been digitized. When we did the architectural survey, we digitized everything we had for that house. And that's 400 houses in town. The survey write-up, Mabel's stuff, and the Prentice write-up. Okay? Now, you also have some very nice flood pictures up here that nobody ever really pays much attention to. The Unionville Museum has also got a very good collection of
Do we
those.
know who took the photos, Betty, of the flood? Or
No, I don't. Okay, out here. This is what I always come to first here. Prentice. Dudley Prentice was a retired guy who decided as a retirement project, I think, that he wanted to produce something historical for this town, and he sure did. I think in about 5 years, he talked to everybody in town, and he collected, the value of this is that he took all these other source materials and he put them all together for any particular house, all in one place. So that if you come to a write-up in here, you get the history of the house, the people who were in it, and their personal family information from any genealogy, any source that he could find of material, and he just collected it all in one place. And this is the best place for any researcher who's doing family research in this town. And we now have 3 copies of this. One's here, one's in the back room, and the third one's out behind the desk. Thank you very much. Because now people don't even have to come into this room to see this. Okay. With Prentice, the only caveat I give to that is that 1900s information, particularly mid-1900s information, you have to be a little bit careful about, because it's mostly hearsay. It's whatever the people in the house told him. And sometimes it's not very accurate. Every once in a while, he makes a mistake. He made a mistake about the Whitmans in the house at the corner where New Place is now, Solomon Whitman's house. Or the Reverend's house, Reverend Samuel's house. And we probably should fix that, but in any event. Okay, then the architectural survey. 4 volumes. Gee, where's number 3? I guess this one's in 3, I guess. Okay? This is the architectural survey. 400, the best 400 houses in town, done in 1985, and that's been digitized. And along with whatever we could find in Prentice, whatever we could find in Mabel, and in some cases with the Unionville houses, there's a folder of stuff that I did way back in the 70s that we put some information in for a few, not very many. Okay, all right. One of the problems we always have is that it's hard to coordinate this with this, because Prentice does a lot by number. These things also have numbers, but then they have common addresses. So what I've done is I've made you a file that says number 1 here is number 1 here. Number 16 here might be number 19 here, or whatever. But I've got you a file now that coordinates what these two are and what's digitized.
We call that a cross index.
Yeah, cross index. Which one of these
Yeah.
is digitized is on the list. Okay, so you somebody that, if you want to decide you want to digitize Prentice,
Right.
which would be a massive undertaking,
Yeah.
but if you wanted to do it,
Wow.
you know which ones you can skip, because they're already done.
Is that on your flash drive?
Yes. Okay, the cemetery list, the WPA lists are here also.
I put it up top.
This is the memento mori. This is digitized. That's on my file. That's on the zip drive. I think they're here. Yeah. The things that were done in the WPA project in the 30s,
Huh.
the ones for Farmington are here. They might already be out on websites. I don't know about
They
that.
are.
Okay.
The hail
Yeah,
surveys,
yeah.
they are.
Okay. On the shelves, in general, these are general resources. They're not unique. There are a lot of family genealogies back here. You have a lot of really good stuff here, but very little of it is unique. However, there's one thing, and I would suggest that you take somebody from the staff and just go through and check to see. There are in here some papers of people, things like this. This is the Epic of Bristol, so it's not really Farmington, but nevertheless, there's some Farmington stuff in here that are papers that people have written that are unique. And one of them is Mr. Brooks's Industrial History of Unionville, which is really terrific. It's not very long, it's only about 4 pages long, but it's wonderful. A lot of information in it. So you might want to just have somebody do a quick survey to see if there's something that you want to take out of here and put on your digitization project. Okay. The Bickford files, which I don't even know where they are. I guess they're down at the end now in the alcove. There's nothing there to be digitized, really. They're the research files that Chris had when he wrote the history of town. They're mainly copies of all the stuff he looked up. That what's really good about it is that it has a lot of copies of stuff that's in out-of-town repositories, things at the Connecticut Historical Society or at the State Library, so that in general, that thing is great. It saves us a lot of trips to Hartford if we want to look something up. But there's nothing really in your digitization project there that's unique. Okay. The canal map. You were all looking at it before. The canal map is one of your treasures. I went looking to see if I had a copy of the photograph, and I don't. There is a photograph of that exists, but I don't know where it is. But if not, you just have somebody take a picture of it. Now we're going to go to the massive treasures that you have in the cases. This is what I've been really working on, and I want to show you several things over here. This is your big treasure in this room. I saved it for last because it's a wonderful, wonderful collection. Now, this thing is billed as the old books from the old libraries. It is much more than that. The old books from the old libraries cover maybe some of this area and a few over here. But in addition to that, Paul Kramer, let me start with Paul first of all. 2012 and 13, Paul did a survey of the books in these cases. He studied about 600 books here. He started with a shelf list that was made about 20 years earlier by Ann R. Carey. He produced a 75-page document that's a description of each book, what he learned or did not learn about it on WorldCat and other sources, what was for sale of that book at the time and its estimated value, and special bits and pieces of information about each book. It's a piece of work. It's full of information, and Terry Matawa has the CD of this in her files. We discovered that last week. I have it also, and it's on the zip drive. The problem with it, and what I've discovered, is that it's been 9 years since he did this, and he did it in shelf list order. And if you go looking for a book and it's not where he said it was then, it's been moved since then, you can't find the book. So I took my other little project, and I've done it, and giving it to you, is that I've rearranged Paul's file into alphabetical order by the title of the book. You still might not be able to find the book, but at least you know what you have by the title of the book. And the shelf location is just one of the pieces of information, the most recent one we know. At some point, you probably ought to have somebody on the staff figure out how to mark these books without damage so that you can easily find something. There are also several rearrangements that could be done. We found that there are copies of multi-volume sets. There are copies, one here, one here, one here, 2 or 3 here, you know, they're all over the place. And that information is all within Paul's file. The Spectator, I think there are 7 volumes of The Spectator. They're in about 5 different places. Can we put them all together? That kind of thing. All right, what he found is that this collection is divided into books from the old libraries, books that were never library books, but were donated to the collection by people in town, especially during the late 1800s and all through the 1900s, many of them inscribed. Many very fine children's books, quite a few of which I know were added during the tenure of Barbara Gibson as director, because her background was as a children's librarian. You have a couple of real gems here of children's books. And items of local history, most of them down in this little section right here. But I think it's inappropriate to have them here, that somebody should do a survey and take those all and put them in the back room. But some of them need to be digitized too. These are potential digitization projects. Okay. You have treasures here, you have rare books, you have valuable books, either historically or monetarily. You have a lot of inscribed books. You have 3 or 4 with the signatures of famous people in them. I suggest to you that you digitize only the covers of most of these books, but that's up to you. There are also some potential conservation projects here, and I think Paul made a list of those, and that's on the file too. It's on the zip drive. All right, now I'm going to show you some things. The 2 oldest books that you have in your collection, both 1702. This is 3 discourses of Sir Walter Raleigh, printed in 1702. If anybody wants to look. Okay.
Oh, cool.
Printed in England.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. This is the only known copy of this book in the United States. There's one other copy of it in Lyon, France. Okay? Okay. The other one is the Book of Martyrs. I have to find the Martyrs here. I love this one. Paul made pictures of this one. He liked it so much. There's another The gloves are great until you try to turn pages.
Oh, look at that.
Okay? There's another one.
It'd be easy.
Okay? And this has a name written on the title page. I want to show you this. Okay? All right? It says John Barnardston, I think. Barnardston. So it belonged to some, and I don't know who that is. I have no idea who that is. But it's a very old book. And these are the two oldest books you have in the collection. Yeah, I think that one goes right here. I got it from here, right? No, I got it from down here. Sorry. Okay, now, rare books. I already told you about the Raleigh. You have two books that are the only known copies in the United States. The Raleigh's one of them. The other one is, I think this one. No, that's not the one. That's not the Spectator. I gotta find it. I have my locations here noted. 18-1. 18. 16, 17, 18. 18's down here. Here we go. This is it. I'm not gonna worry about the shelf. Okay. This is called Modern Discoveries, or a collection of facts and observations. And, you know, a lot of books have really long old titles. This one goes for about 16 lines. Principally relative to the various branches of natural history, resulting from the geological, topographical, botanical, physiological, mineralogical, and philosophical researches of celebrated modern travelers in every quarter of the globe. All in this little tiny book. You know, this one is the one that's known. There's a copy in the British Library, but there's a map in it. There's a map. You've got several that are valuable because they've got maps. And these early books that have maps. You know, but that's Blagden. And the bookmark here didn't, this is an old library book, but the bookmark didn't survive. I don't know why not. Martin Bull did it. I'm going to show you a couple of little Martin Bull bookmark in them. Martin Bull was a local silversmith who engraved the bookplate for the first library. Okay. And you have some very nice copies of it out in one of your files, but here's an original. This is a monthly, and it's covered over by the covers. There's some debate about whether you should keep these covers. Paul checked with 2 or 3 different people who all recommended that they do be kept, but it's not great. This is one of the Spectator volumes. They're not great for the books, but they do sometimes allow you at least to be able to read the spines from outside. One of the problems is just not being able to know what the book is unless you pull it out. Okay. Now, the old bookplates, that one. Okay, valuable historically. Here we come to one of mine and Andy's favorite books. This is Select Harmony. It's a book that was engraved in Farmington in 1779 by Joel Allen. It's a music book with the rules for singing. And this particular one was given to this library by, I believe, either the State Library or the State Historical Society, and there's a newspaper article about it, so that you can, the provenance of the book is right here. And this was, again, thanks to the Barneys and Wilmarth Lewis and a couple of other people pressuring the state to say, this is a Farmington object. It was engraved in Farmington, it was printed in Cheshire. This is historically a very valuable book. And it's also monetarily valuable because there are so few copies of it. And this is one that I don't have to put on a cradle because it's already broken. You know, the pages are loose in it.
That could be conservative.
See, but this is a conservation project. This is one of Paul's conservation projects. But anyway, this is a real historical treasure,
How's the
this book.
copy you have, Andy?
Good shape.
Is it?
Andy's is in better shape than this one, but nevertheless, you have the cover and the title page. Some of the copies, the few copies that there are, some of them are missing, either the cover or the title page. So, I know, he doesn't. But he's already digitized it, so all you have to do is the cover to prove that you've got one. Valuable monetarily, okay? You have a bunch of books that are worth between $500 and $1,000, okay? You have a couple that are really special, okay? You're not gonna sell them, but
Yeah,
you
right.
need to know,
Right.
all right? First, Bruce and the Nile. They're both travel books, believe it or not. No, it's in 6 volumes. We have 2 of them, I believe. Travels to Discover the Source of the Nile. James Bruce.
Here.
Okay, now if I look at the inventory, I might find that we have 4. What strikes me is that we have 4 out of the 6, but I don't remember that completely. But you see what somebody wrote in it?
Sure. Oh, yes, Village Library, Farmington.
Okay.
Very good.
And they gave it a number. Okay, now when we get the back room, I'm gonna show you the number books, the collection books. Okay? Selections from natural history, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? This set has engravings like this. It's just, well, let me show you this one, okay?
That, yes.
All right? It has beautiful engravings, and there's a lot of natural history stuff in it. Here's one too, okay? For sale on the market, it runs between $5,000 and $10,000 for the set. And I think you've got 4 out of the 6, but these 2 are together, so. This one is actually, the cover is almost detached. But travels through Arabia. Niebuhr, the British sent an expedition. He was on it. He was the only one that survived. It has, if you have the right thing, it has a map of the area, and it's the first time anybody called Yemen, Yemen. This is another set that's worth, according to Paul, this was all 2012 figures too, so things may have changed since then. $3,500 to $5,000 for the set, okay? These are your really monetarily valuable things. Oh, I missed this. The History of New Hampshire, and you have all 3 volumes of that one, I know that. That's another historically valuable book. The first written history of New Hampshire, and considered very authoritative and very, very good. Okay. All right. Here. All right. Anybody here doesn't know about the relationship to Theodore Roosevelt? His sister, Anna, was married to Sheffield, the original William Sheffield Coles. And they lived at Oldgate. And this is signed by Theodore Roosevelt, a message from the president, his first major speech as president of the United States, given to the Congress. And this is a, as Paul says, water-stained book,
Sure.
but the fact that it's signed
Yes.
is, and probably came from the Coles family.
Sure. Awesome.
This is locally historically valuable.
Yes.
Last one. Famous. There, you have 3. but I'm gonna show you two. The third one is P.T. Barnum. You have a signed P.T. Barnum biography. I see probably a lot of people in Connecticut have that.
Sure.
This one, Booker T. Washington.
Oh, boy.
All right?
First edition.
Not just signed, inscribed
Isn't that fantastic?
to Mrs. Sarah E. Barney,
Boy, boy.
with best wishes from Booker T. Washington in 1900.
Hmm.
There were facsimile signatures of him in all these books. This is not a facsimile. This is an original. Okay? This is a terrific piece of the collection. This is Fairy Realm.
Oh, wow.
With the author's name is very small on here, Tom Hood. Illustrations by Gustave Doré. Now I want you to look at some of these. They're gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. You have to. Oh, that's not the best one. Ah. I should have marked the page with the okay, but I'm gonna do this. This book is falling apart,
Yes.
frankly,
Yeah.
and you wouldn't want to let anybody touch this
Yeah, look at that.
because they could walk out of here
Oh,
with some of these
absolutely.
illustrations.
And
But-
they litho or are they intaglio?
I don't know, Andy. I don't know enough about art. You probably could tell us.
They're a litho, but they're really great.
Okay, now this is my favorite.
Oh,
I want you to see this one.
isn't that fantastic?
Paul took a picture. This photograph is digitized. He took a picture of it.
So beautiful.
It's in the file of his photographs, which is on the zip drive.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
And it's just a beautiful, beautiful
So
stuff.
it's lithography, so it was signed in the plate and then it was created as a lithography for this.
Okay, okay. But this is a wonderful book and another conservation project. But still, also, the possibility of digitization project, or even maybe if you want to use it as a fundraiser, make some copies of some of them and sell them to somebody. I don't know.
So that may have been donated when Barbara Gibson was
I
here?
don't know. I don't think. See, it says Sarah.
1868.
From, let me see now, let me see what it says. 1868. From Newcomb and Lizzie. Now, if you can tell me who Sarah, Newcomb, and Lizzie are, we could figure out who this is. Those are not particularly names that I'm familiar with. But it might be Sarah Brandegie Barney,
Yeah. What year?
1868. She would have been probably a teenager about then. Well, no, she would have been older than that. She was married. D. Newton was born in the 70s. He was born in 79, I think. And she was married for a few years, and then her husband died. And I don't know how old she was. Oh, local history stuff. Okay, last thing. This is our segue into the back room. In this little section down here, there's a whole bunch of local history stuff. Some of it I think was put here just because it was small and thin. But there's a bunch of it that I think should go probably back into the back room instead. And it starts, not there. It starts about here with this batch. And it extends to, this is the one I wanted to look up. Vital Records, 3 volumes in copybooks. I don't even know why you have this, but one says Episcopal. The other one says Marriage and Deaths, New Haven, 1800. And the third one says Farmington Deaths, 1812 to 27. So somebody should take, like me, or Shara, or somebody historically, should take a look at this and see what's really here. But these are potential digitization projects. And they probably ought to go into the back room. There's also, it says a manual of, I love this one, Manual of School Duties of Pupils of the Unionville High School, 1859. I didn't even know there was a high school in Unionville in 1859. The high school in Unionville was built in 1868, so I don't know where they went to high school. But this is a manual. No, I don't think anybody's ever looked at this. The Unionville Museum people would die to see this, I'm sure. Golden chains. It's mixed in. There's a Gad Andrews, which is I think already in the back room, You have one of the Gad Andrews' notebooks. Gad Andrews was the guy who did all the genealogical research for Timlow when he wrote the history of Southington. And Gad Andrews kept about 7 or 8 of these notebooks. They're full of Farmington genealogical information. A lot of it is not unique, it's not copied. But then he talked to people and they added stuff. And you can, when you go through the book, you can see the difference between what he was taking off the vital records versus what people were telling him. And the value of the books is in what people told him in addition to what was already there. But Lewis Walpole has one in their collection. And you guys have one in your collection, and it's sitting on the desk in the back room the last time I saw it. Okay, now let's move to the back room. The library records start here. This is all FEGLA and library stuff. And the treasures are the ones up there on that second section on the top row. And that's the old stuff. That's the stuff you want to digitize. And in there, I found a file that Paul did of photographs of some pages. And I said, this doesn't make sense. It starts with the Phoenix, and then it goes back to the monthly. It's out of sequence, chronologically. However, okay? Last week I came in and took a look at it. Ha. Thrifty old Yankees that they are. And because it was all Elijah Porter, and he was the same guy keeping the book, I'm going to show you. I love it when I see things like this. All right? It says Phoenix Library Records, right?
So he,
Monthly library records. They're upside down and backwards. And he kept the catalog. It's got pages of the catalog, so you know you can fix these with the ones that are still left in the cases. You could do, nobody's done a project on that yet. There's all kinds of stuff in here about what quarterly bills they paid, the account book, the account books that he kept, fines, everything. Then, when it became the Phoenix, he turned it over and did it here. And that's why Paul's got pictures from both of them, but he did them out of order.
Right.
He found Phoenix first.
Awesome.
Anyway, this is the first record book for the libraries that was kept by Elijah Porter. And this is a real historical treasure. And it's cute on top of it. Okay. Then after the library records, you get into the oral histories, which are,
Got that?
okay. The oral history you don't need to digitize because they're already, unless you want to take the early ones and digitize the print version of the early ones. But in general, oral history's there. Then this is more FEGLA stuff. There's some photograph files of the Friends. There's Friends stuff here. Then we get to the yearbooks. I don't do yearbooks. However, up top, the old school records. Again, this is your digitization project for this area right here. And this one, this is the book. I know somebody's gonna want to see this. We'll take this one out to look. This one's done. Paul and I did this one. This is the book of the first library of the first society. It starts in 1795. It has John Mix's gorgeous handwriting in it. It covers everything they did, which includes running the schools, running the cemetery, Riverside Cemetery, giving money to the church, rules and regulations, the setup of the original 12 school districts, and then the choosing of textbooks, hiring of teachers. It's got everything in it, up to 1855. And it's the overall board, and this is about 200 pages, and this is digitized. But this is, again, this is another conservation project, but at least we got it digitized. And so you got the information preserved, even if the book is in sad shape. And with it digitized, nobody really has to handle this book. This way. Okay, but there are other books up there that are early 1800s too. There's a lot of center school stuff, village, Farmington stuff. There's a lot of Union District stuff too. But that's your digitization project for
Right.
this area.
Yep.
Okay. Clauser photographs.
Yep.
2 boxes, plus a few here that we think are done by his brother. And they've been digitized. Paul took pictures of 300 and something photographs. And they're all digitized. Also in there, which we don't tell people about very much, but somewhere in one of these boxes, is a letter written by Clara Schumann in German to Clauser, Karl Clauser. And it's almost unreadable because of her penmanship. But there's a lady in town named Helga Schramme who is German, of German extraction. And she and her husband both can read Old German script. And they worked on it, and then I met a woman on a cruise from California who also read it, and she worked on it, and they've been able to figure out most of the words in the letter. Hasn't been translated, it's in German, hasn't been translated. But there's a letter in there from Clara Schumann with her signature. Okay? No, grand lists. The grand lists are copies of grand lists that are in Town Hall, I do believe. Most of them are the earliest ones are 1750. I don't think this is a digitization project, but you'd have to check with Town Hall about that kind of thing. Then, more modern things. Where did we find it now? There's a photograph. Andy, you're gonna love this one. Andy, we had a 350th anniversary of town in 1950. 1990. Then we had Farmington festivals for every year up until 95, and then we had another big celebration in 95 to do both the settlement of town and the 350th anniversary of the settlement of town and the naming of the town. And in 1990, I don't remember this, frankly. This is over 30 years ago, and I don't remember it. They did pictures of people who lived in town then. And honest to goodness, I started going through these the other day, and I said, well, for me personally, it's embarrassing. It's a terrible picture of Ellen and me. But if you want to know about anybody, they're all alphabetical. I hope.
Yeah.
But there are going to be people in here that you know.
Sure, yeah. Terrific.
There's Sharon David right there. Okay? This 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And she's dressed up.
Awesome.
A lot of people were dressed up for that. That was
Right.
the day they did the parade, and a lot of people got dressed up for it.
Oh, great.
That's Peter Van Beckham, if you've met him. Yay. But these are just people who were willing to have their pictures taken. And the wonderful thing is, there's 2 of my favorite ladies who are both dead now. B. Finney and Pete Taylor. They called her Pete. Pete was the person who was responsible for all the gardening at the village library for years. She's an expert gardener, and she knew where all the special trees in town were. And I always regret that I never ran around town with her and had her show me all of them. But these are, Harriet Taft lived in town all her life, lived over near Parsons on the Avenue in one of those buildings when she was young, and then got married and lived on Levy Street in Unionville. Neat lady. A lot of family history there. Oh, the Wallenbergs. Here's Jill Stripe.
Yeah.
No, Nancy Stripe, I'm sorry. Here's B and Dick Stockwell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Some people took really good
They
pictures.
really did, yeah, some of them really did.
You know. The Spasianos. Janet worked at the library. You know, but it's
Awesome.
you know, there's Karen Comer, isn't that? No, it's not, it's somebody else. Oh, I thought it was upside down, it looks like Karen. Sorry, I shouldn't make, you know. But it's there's Bill and Fran Raymond. It's a nice collection of pictures. Dick Noyes. He was one of the great people in this town when I first lived here. And a lot of these people are gone. Oh, Henry's in here too, the Masons. I gotta show you the Masons. Sorry, see, we get into this Russ and Kathy Hunter, and he just died recently. The Manuses, my neighbors, and the Masons. There they are. Esther and Henry, and Skip, you know, and I never forget Henry educating us about a couple of things, and he was an expert on diamond playing. Yeah, people who.
So this is when their family came, Betty?
That's great.
I'm not sure what this means.
Yeah,
Okay.
their ancestors,
I
yeah,
see.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
What was that one,
That
Betty?
was the Masons.
This one, they wrote that they came in the 1640s. Well, their family did come in the 1640s because they were Porter descendants.
Is that Skip right there?
That's Skip, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's his father and mother.
Wow.
Henry was he and John Christensen were my sources of information in the village for 10 years or so, and you never fail. They were right every single time. Just, you know, you're gonna see all kinds of people.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Isn't that wonderful?
Oh, wow.
And this guy's now got 5 children of his own.
Oh, wow. Oh, great.
You know, it's really neat. It's 30 years ago, and it's recent. It's not
Really? Yeah.
it's not digitizable.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not, you know, it's not.
Wow.
That kind of, but
I know.
I just wanted to show it to you because
Great.
it's fun.
That's
It's really.
I'm getting
So
old.
if you digitize something like that, you have
It's
to
not a
permission
digitization
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right.
about the photographer and
Okay.
the sitters.
Exactly.
All right. This little corner has got clubs. It's got the Prentice copy, but it's also got clubs and organizations. There's quite a selection here of exchange club material and garden club material, and the garden club's got a lot of really neat pictures of people from the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. I've looked at that, and that's really good stuff. So don't throw that away. These are photographs. There's house file stuff from the Hurlburt house file, more material from that. There's 2 boxes of stuff on loan from the Historical Society. There's Barbara Donahue's black and white exhibit. Then you get to this wall, and this is your real treasure wall. You got, first of all, the Gay collection, the Julius Gay stuff. Above that, you've got the Brander's book, okay? The branding book, which is, again, along with the map. Yes, let's get it out and let people see it. This is a treasure that we have had conserved, that we had thanks to some very generous people. We got this book conserved. It is one of the few surviving, which I never can get this box open. All right, Andy, you're gonna have to show me how to get the, I never can remember how to open it.
It's a slip case and.
Does it go lengthwise?
Well, it is.
Anyway, it's one of the few surviving Brander's books in the state.
Yes.
And it's early 1700s, it's in 3 sections. It's early 1700s, late 1700s, and then in the end, it looks like whoever was the Brander had a teenage daughter who loved poetry. And she copied about 10 pages worth of poetry into the back of it.
If you hold it.
We have done,
Yeah, it's got suction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on. One second.
Other way.
the other way,
Yeah, there was just some suction holding it
Okay.
together.
Ah, yes, and then, once you get it down like this, you do this to it. And
There you
this is the book,
go. Great, how great.
okay? The pages of the book.
So what would the earliest
Okay.
date be from?
The earliest date is 1714.
Wow.
Holy cow.
Shara and I have, this has been digitized.
Yes.
Shara and I have done an index to it.
Terrific.
Which is this?
Did the index,
No, no.
no, I don't know where the index is. This other box is just the cover of the book. When they digitized it, they didn't wanna put, when they conserved it, they didn't wanna put the cover back on it, but that's just the
That's
cover
that,
of the book
yes.
separately.
Is this the flash drive that was digitized to?
It might be,
It's
was,
spelled out with it, right?
was that in it?
It
I
wasn't
think it
with
was.
it,
Okay.
it was next to it.
Next
This
to
is
it.
library.
Next to
It looks like your
That's my
handwriting.
handwriting, so
Yeah.
that's probably what's on there.
Yeah, it was
But
like,
You,
with
you
this
don't
different here.
have yet the second part, but I'm giving it to you today on the
Oh,
zip
oh,
drive, because I did it last year
Oh.
in Florida when I was there.
Oh.
And Shara has checked it all, so that we're pretty sure that it's all accurate. But there are, it's like a census of the town in the early 1700s. It's all the horses that these people
it.
owned,
Yes, yes.
and all the ones they were trading, and there were a couple of them who were in the business of buying and selling horses.
Sure.
It's obvious when you see that this guy's got 6 records over a period of 10 years, and this guy's got
Yeah.
55,
Right, right.
you know?
Terrific.
They're buying and selling, and they were doing a lot of business with out-of-town people. A lot of people in Wethersfield, a lot of people in what was then called Wallingford, but is now really Cheshire. Because Wallingford was like Farmington, it was
Yeah.
huge geographically. And they were probably going down to New Haven to be shipped out on boats at that
Okay.
point. Anyway, that would be a wonderful, we think that's a wonderful thesis project
That
for
is.
somebody to go through that book and figure out what these guys are doing with these horses. Okay. All right. The Branders book and the Gay collection. Next come the Selectmen's records. There's 16 boxes. They're all the Selectmen's records from the 1800s. It's another treasure trove. And how much of it you want to digitize, I don't know. But it's got correspondence, it's got bills, it's got things about the poor farm and the town farm. It's got what already is digitized are the Civil War records, because Cliff Alderman and I did that when we did the Civil War program about 5 years ago or so. And their Civil War enlistment certificates, substitute certificates, and there's a third category, miscellaneous stuff. Okay, then there's the first church book is somewhere in there. And again,
They're on the left. Over here. These two.
yeah, but that's not the book I'm looking for. I think the book is on this pile. There's a House of Industry book here too, but there's a first church book. But then there are these little addendum boxes of more stuff that came over. This all came over from the town clerk's office. Okay? This came later because they hadn't given us everything. And in here is the book of the 1901 to 1920 Farmington Borough Court, with all the records of all the people who were getting charged with speeding their cars in the early 1900s, plus some more serious crimes. It's another little project to do someday, historically research project. There's one of my favorites, again. You know how you get little favorites that you say, someday I'm gonna do something with this one. The Association for the Detection of Horse Thieves.
Oh, my
is this part of your bad boys project?
Yes, yes, yes.
Wow.
This,
Wow.
no, that's not it. No, it's supposed to be in here. It's not that one. Yeah, it is.
There you
Okay, all right. This is 1800s mainly stuff. But this is another digitization project. It's not, the book's not full. There's a lot of empty
Right.
pages in it. But, things like the meetings and interesting things that happened and, you keep saying, you know, it's a small town, the same names.
Yeah.
Sam Deming, Austin Williams, Egbert Coles, George Root, Lucius Dorman, here, Charles Lewis, Lucius Dorman, James Curtis,
So this was a town-sponsored association?
No, I don't think so.
Oh,
I
it was just a group of men.
They just decided they didn't want anybody to steal horses. There's a sort of a locally famous story about them chasing a guy all the way to, not to New Haven, but down in that area somewhere, to get back somebody's horse that was taken. But I would recommend that go into a phase box all by itself, that book. But there's stuff in here. Citizen Sanitary Protection Association. They tried to form a sort of a sewer commission. And this is in the 1880s. The Fire Society, there's some records here. And then this one, the Coles Hook and Ladder Company number 1. And this, Farmington Fire Society records for 100 years. There's stuff, all this stuff that nobody's ever really looked at. You know, but you've got a wealth of things here. Okay, it was down here on the bottom, right? I think it was right there, underneath the selectmen's records, yeah. Okay. There is the record book of the church, although it's called the first society. It's really the first ecclesiastical society, which was the church, and it's their financial record book, and it goes from about 1795 or so to 1900, and that's in here somewhere, but I don't know exactly where.
Is that what you were thinking of, Andy?
Okay,
Were you thinking of that?
No.
I have First Society, so it must be on this book somewhere. There's some little books too. This is all the stuff that came over from Town Hall.
Right.
Okay, next. Family papers. This is the section I've never really looked at, is this group. Family papers from various families. And you can just read. Gleason, Lee Patterson, Mason, Sperry. The Sperrys gave them a lot of stuff because the Sperrys ran the town farm. So they got a lot of stuff from the Sperrys. In some of these boxes, there's stuff more than just that family. Do you know what I mean? You have copies of some of Andy's account books. He has a copy of the Root and the Gridley and the Woodruff account books up here. Then down here is all stuff that was taken out of the room and brought back here that's original. Things that used to be in the pamphlet file that were original documents. They copied them and then kept the copies in the pamphlet file but put the originals back here. There's also a picture file. They used to have a picture file out there, and a lot of them were really old pictures. So they've done that too. That was a cleanup job. This is more photographs, some of them taken by Dick Butterfield, some of them taken by other people. But photographs and scrapbooks, and this is, it's just sort of this and that and everything. And then, here we go, always save the best for last. These are the treasures. What's on that first two shelves up there are all of your irreplaceable, original account books, diaries, etc. And they cover, I think there are 26 of them, and they cover an awful lot of Farmington and even some out-of-town history. And of those, there are 12 of them that are on this microfilm that have been digitized. I don't have a copy of those, but there's the 12 that have been digitized already. So don't digitize anything here until you make sure you got that group taken care of. Then in addition to that, well, we had one duplicate because we did the Nehemiah Street account book. We digitized, and that was on the microfilm, so it got done twice. But we also digitized the Wheeler, and we digitized the school book, and that's it, I think. But that's Joel Allen included in that. So that's one of the ones someday I'd like to look at it to see if it covers 1779 when he engraved the book. Some of these people were really out-of-town people, but nevertheless, there's still an awful lot of really good stuff here. But these are your irreplaceable treasures. These are all Cole's books. And then you got down in here sort of another little mishmash. And then what I want to mention too is that somewhere in this room, and I don't know where they are right now, are the photographs that Lindsay Whitaker took of Memento Mori. Not all of the gravestones, but probably about 100 and 150 of them. And they're in here somewhere. They were black and whites that were taken in the 1970s, I think. And that's in here. I have a copy of a few of them, but not very many. But that's a project that was partly done too. I think that's it.
Wood.
Great, 11:30.
Okay.
Wow.